one way of understanding this inquiry, how we hold back, is that there is a habitual kind of contraction that is in our nervous system, in our minds, and that rather than opening and resting in presence, we contract away from it. And it's just habitual. And we all have our own ways of doing it, our own particular patterning. But that there's some fear in our nervous system that contracts us away from presence, that contracts us away from really that flow, of that pure flow of that inner fire, of that aspiration. And that fear, I've been using the word torques it, contracts it. The inner fire is still there. It's just tightened, twisted, torqued, and so it doesn't flow as freely like a fountain. It does not really, just absolutely flow out and then bathe our soul, our spirit. It's torqued. So the question is, what untorques? What helps to relax the fear? What helps us to access the purity and the depths of our aspiration? What helps us live aligned with our hearts? That's the question. And the most core response to that question is it's always going to come down to presence. That in any moment that we begin to get more present, we're going to get in touch with the purity of the inner fire. But I'm going to name some different ways that we can draw our attention back into presence. And one is, in any moment that you remember what you love, and that you purposefully bring your attention to what you love, you will begin to rediscover the pathways to that inner fire. And that reflection needs to be done as a kind of deliberate practice. Because our minds are so biased towards the survival bias towards the negative, what's wrong, what's missing. It's an incredible practice, whether you call it a gratitude practice, and there's now a lot of really good science that if you each day just take the time to, in a journal, write down 3 things you're grateful for, or 5 things, that it can turn around depression, it can really bring a sense of true well-being. So deliberate practice. And you can take a moment just to close your eyes right now, just to get a taste. And in the space of this silence, just to name to yourself in a mental whisper, I am grateful for, and then just fill in the blank something that is in your life right now. And just keep doing it until you hear the bell ringing. Now just pick one thing that you notice that you're grateful for, that you know resonates deeply. Just one thing. One person or experience that you know you're grateful for. And go closer into it and sense what really brings up that gratitude. It might be a person that you have in mind. Just to really let yourself sense that person's goodness, the love between you. Or it might be a place in nature, experience in nature. Whatever it is, just go close to it and feel what it is that really brings up the gratitude. And then just let go of the idea of the thing that you're grateful for and just feel the gratitude or love or appreciation in a visceral way in your heart and body, and just let it be as big as it wants to be. See how much it wants to fill your body, the cells, the spaces between the cells. Just that warmth of gratitude. And know that as you are doing this reflection, you're tapping into the purity of inner fire. This love, this warmth, this caring about some part of life is the innocence and essence of the inner fire. So one way that we arouse or reconnect with inner fire is to reflect on what we love, what we're grateful for, and feel it in an embodied way. You can open your eyes when you'd like. The second way is that when that appreciation, that enjoyment, that love emerges spontaneously, you see the daffodils and the yellow, and there's something about spring that just, or you're with a child and you see the light in their eyes when they're really excited about something. Or I know for me, when I'm walking by the river, and there's certain times that I will just stop, and there's just the sounds of nature and the sounds of the currents and the looks of the currents, and inside it just gets very quiet, and that quietness feels so delicious. It's to pause in the moments when we're awake to what we love and really get to know those moments, savor them. What happens typically is we just cruise right forward, and our brains are very, very familiar with unpleasant kind of experiences, but the places where the inner fire is, where we're love or there's longing, it's like we haven't really gotten to know those. So pause, savor, and that creates more of a access to the inner fire. Okay, so one category is relating to what we love. The other category is presence when there's suffering. If we're present when there's suffering, we're going to feel the longing to help relieve suffering. We're going to feel our cherishing of life. And it could be the suffering that's societal. The inner fire can really arise in places where we sense the pain of, it could be the pain of the earth. I know for myself that sometimes when I see areas where trees have been taken down, or I read about some of what's happened with the coal mines in West Virginia, or this Keystone oil pipeline, or whatever, it's like my body hurts with the earth. It feels that. It's very physical. It might be like what happened from Newtown after the gun violence. It's like very few people's nervous systems didn't feel the incredible pain of that loss. That touches into the inner fire that can lead to social change. It could be for many people who are following what's going on in the Supreme Court right now, knowing inside out for themselves or their friends the pain of, not having our rights as humans be respected if we're gay. It's inner fire can have to do with suffering that's societal, and of course, it has to be visceral. It's not an idea that, oh, yes, this should change or that should change. It's when we really feel the pain of the earth, or the pain of what happens to people when they're discriminated against, or the pain of the violence and the loss. And when we experience our own pain, our own wounds, our own suffering, and we open to it, then that inner fire that wants to find that refuge of peace, of safety, of healing is awakened. And I'd like to share with you, this is a poem by the poet Hafez, that I've always loved that I think speaks to this. He says, don't surrender your loneliness so quickly. Let it cut more deep. Let it ferment and season you as few human or even divine ingredients can. Something missing in my heart tonight has made my eyes so soft, my voice so tender, my need of God absolutely clear. Something missing in my heart tonight has made my eyes so soft, my voice so tender, my need of God absolutely clear. So again, this inner fire is the sensitivity or intuition of what's possible, our belonging, the possible sense of communion with God or with goodness or with awareness or with love. And it's that longing that actually brings us to what we long for. The longing comes from love and it's calling us home. Nachiketa had Lord Yama, this wisdom of impermanence, in a way as his guide. And in the Carlos Castaneda books, death is described as an advisor. And some of you, if you haven't read it, this is the shaman Don Juan says that when death is on your left shoulder, all pettiness drops away. So we begin to sense that when we're aware of the preciousness of life, when we're aware of what we long for, that inner fire wakes up. And often it really takes a big jolt in our personal life. There's one woman I know who teaches elementary school. She was diagnosed with breast cancer. And people, everywhere she went, people were letting her know how much they loved her. And that was the healing medicine, just feeling so loved. She's been in remission for quite some time. But she says in teaching now, her basic, this is the inner fire, it's always, she says, to find some way to let every child that she teaches know she cares. That's it. What if we all went through life remembering something that simple? That every person we contact in some way to communicate care, to see who they are, to slow down, to be present. The inner fire aligns our life with our heart. I've mentioned this before, when I decide to do a talk, often things happen in my life that end up plunging me into whatever I'm talking about. And so I knew that when I was doing the Nachiketa story, which I try to do once every year or two, because it's Lord Yama, that loss and change would really be in my face. And in the last few weeks, one of my best friends lost her brother when he was pretty young still, and so I've been keeping her company in that process. And dear friend from our community, Gabriel, who's on the board, is moving, so that's a sense of loss. Forgive me for, I just was spontaneous, you're sitting right there. And my dog of 13 years, Chela, died last week. Yeah. And so, as one friend said, you know, it's the teachings about how to be with change and loss that are really at the root of this path. And when change and loss can have us go to that place that says, what really matters, then it's part of our freedom. And that's the possibility. Thich Nhat Hanh teaches this hug that I try to share whenever I remember, because it's so cool. I don't know if he still does it, because I haven't been to his retreats recently, but I went to a retreat 15 years ago and he taught it. So I went with a very good friend of mine. We hadn't spent much time together. We thought, oh, how cool. We'll drive down together and have a chance to sit together. So we go to this retreat. At the end, he has you take a partner. So she and I were partners. And you stand in front of the partner, and you first begin with namaste, which is, I see the divine in you. And then you hug each other, and the first inhale and exhale, you're reflecting, I'm going to die. The second inhale and exhale, you're going to die. And then the third is, and we have these precious moments together. I remember leaving with this woman and us sharing on the ride back how those moments, that, again, this inner fire, that sense of what we were cherishing, had us so present, so alive in that loving. So it's about remembering what matters. It's about remembering. One friend in a book that's coming out soon writes, one of the practices she does is whenever she's saying goodbye to somebody, she says goodbye as if this is really goodbye. And it's not a morose thing. It's not morbid. It's actually real, that we don't know. And everything's coming and going. And what if we treated this moment in some ways, if this is it, this counts. These connections, this contact. It's not like we're waiting for something down the road. If we lived as if this matters, then we'd be guided by the purity of the inner fire. That this moment matters. This one right here, and I'm not talking metaphorically, like right this moment. Presence is our gateway to the inner fire that then deepens our inhabiting of presence. So let's do a reflection on this together, and I'm going to close with this reflection. Just even as you begin, just to know that even in a short reflection, it's possible to have some homecoming. So just let that be your intention, to come home to what's true in you. And let the breath be gentle. Let your awareness come into your body. See if there's some natural places of letting go. In the spirit of Lord Yama, this wisdom of impermanence. This reflection, which we did together some months back, begins by asking, if you knew you had a year to live, what would most matter to you? What would you do? How would you live? If you knew you had a month to live, again, sense what would most matter to you for this month. What would you do? What would be priority? How would you live your days? If you had a week to live, again, sensing what would most matter? Sensing into this inner fire, this longing, this yearning, that which would energize or direct your attention. What would most matter for that week? What would you do? How would you live? So if you had a day to live, again, to feel into the purity of that inner fire, that which knows what matters, which it directs you towards what matters. In that day, what would you do? How would you live your moments? And if you knew you just had a few minutes, so you're right here and this is it. You just have a few minutes to live. What is it you care about? What matters? How do you want to be for these few minutes? To take these final moments just to inwardly honor, or acknowledge, or bow to what you cherish, to what matters, to the presence, the love, whatever it is that you know is your true refuge, is what you want to inhabit or be. And imagine how remembering this, how reconnecting with this over and over again might change, might affect tonight for you as you leave. Tonight as you get home, tomorrow as you wake up. How that inner fire, the purity of that inner fire, can help you to align your heart and your life, moment to moment. Namaste.